Hello, welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another edition of Industry News. As you saw in the description, we're going to talk about two brands, SRAM acquiring Velocio. And please, if I've pronounced that wrong, maybe give me some phonetic description on how to pronounce it in the description below. Okay, in your comments below. Now, this is an interesting acquisition, because, first let's give it a little bit of history, and then I'll say why it's interesting. So, SRAM acquired Velocio the deal closed March 3rd of 2022. It was announced to the public on March the 9th of 2022. And the Velocio as a company, they got started around 2013. So this is a fairly new company, if you will, only about 9 years old. And if you're not familiar with what they are, what type of brand they are, they're a brand that believes in, their buzzwords are like design and culture and sustainability. So I will read a quote from them in a minute. But what I find interesting about this is just one more step in the process where SRAM as a company is trying to be like Shimano. So there's a previous video where I talked about how they purchased Hammerhead, the cycling computers, and how in that video I talked about the history of SRAM and how through acquisition, so rather than make the product themselves, they've gone out and purchased, let's say, Quark for power meters, and Truveta for this, and Avid for that, and so on and so forth. So, and I'll list those companies here as well. But that history is they wanted to be able to, in the OE market, original equipment market, build a bike from front to back with all SRAM equipment. And the OE market is obviously huge. If you get that product onto the bike gets underneath a rider's butt. Whenever they need to replace something, well, they just replace what they already have, right? My bike came with SRAM shifters, cassette derailleur, chain. That's what I'm going to replace it with. So if you get it into the OE market, then it just continues a life of its own as it gets repaired at service and things like that. So let's look at these notes real quick. So what I want to do is I want to read to you the quote from Velocio. And it basically says, in selling Velocio, our focus was on finding a partner, a large brand or brand family that would value our three pillars. Design, as I mentioned before, responsibility, so that goes back to the sustainability, manufacturing sustainability, and culture. So they approached SRAM, which I think is interesting as well. We approached SRAM precisely because we thought there might be a place in their well-respected orbit of components and bike products for us. We approached SRAM because our cultures are compatible. Okay, so now we look at SRAM, who has a lot of hard goods, such as zip wheels, components, things like that. RockShox, Avid, Truveta, Time pedals, because they didn't have pedals. Now, Time pedals is fairly recent. Quark power meters and Hammerhead computers is also fairly recent. So then I start thinking, as a business, I'm much smaller, but I start thinking as a business owner, okay, how many acquisitions can we do in such a short amount of time? And what is seeming to be the trend is that they buy the company, but they allow, like, for example, Hammerhead, to continue to design their products and do whatever. Velocio, the same kind of thing. They will allow them to do all of their supply chain, their manufacturing, and their product design. And if we think about this again, product design is one of the key pillars, the 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier. So now we've got SRAM front to back on a bike. Now are they looking to outfit a rider head to toe, right? So we've got a clothing brand. Do we need to buy a shoe brand? Do we need to buy a helmet brand to continue to do the Shimano thing, where Shimano bought Pearl Izumi back in 2008? And they also sell clothing through their Shimano brand and their Pro brand. If you're not familiar, Pro is a brand underneath Shimano, and they make handlebars, they make components. And so you have the clothing, and you have laser helmets for, we're looking at head to toe, right? Helmet, sunglasses, clothing from Pearl Izumi, Shimano, or Pro, and then shoes from Shimano and Pearl Izumi. So you can outfit a rider from head to toe with Shimano products. Is SRAM looking to do the same thing? So, and you may not be familiar with Velocio. Their product line is mid to high end, right? So they're inexpensive. They range from like $309 for a bib short to $109 for a short. And bib shorts, if you're not aware, is basically, for lack of a better description, suspenders that hold the short portion in place. So from about $109 to $309 for the top end bib, and then their jerseys are from $99, $89 up to $199. So they're a nice niche brand, and they offer a good high quality product. Now, let me read you one other quote on what Velocio thought they were gaining from SRAM. What's exciting is that we'll now have SRAM's backing for more independent product design development, including a bigger push towards sustainability. It's one of their core values in product offerings and how we deliver them. We'll also have SRAM's reach into racing and teams, as well as their insights into global distribution and retail support. If the burden of growing a business is to grow even further, there are few partners more suited to the future of cycling industry than SRAM. So they're looking at the ability for SRAM to get them throughout the world, and whatever that backing is, financial, of course, in any way. And the thing is, as you grow as a business, you don't want to get diluted. This is something else that they talked about, Velocio talked about on their website, and I'll link that in the description. So you'll have the full write-up and you can read it yourself. So I'd like to know a couple of things from you folks. One, how many of you use the Velocio product line? How do you feel about Velocio, a smaller niche brand, now falling under the umbrella of SRAM? Do you think the product will get diluted? It appears that SRAM is pretty good about letting the companies they acquire stay the way they are. But I'm curious to hear what you think, and please leave a comment down below. Let me check my notes to make sure I've talked about everything. Oh, back in 2015, Velocio was already working with SRAM as they fielded the Velocio SRAM UCI Pro cycling team. So they've kind of been working together for a few years. So I guess it just seemed logical for them when they needed to grow to seek out SRAM to purchase them. By the way, it's not unusual that a hard goods company, Shimano, SRAM, Campagnolo, they all have their own clothing brand clothing line. So it just seemed inevitable for SRAM to do this. That's about it, I think. But yes, I mean, the big thing is, how do you feel about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time and your attention. If you'd like to hear more about industry news, who bought who, and who's selling and who's not doing this and who's going bankrupt or whatever, let me know in the comments down below that sure, you like to hear about industry news and my take on it. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you up the road.